anyway by the rules of the meeting. So welcome to this webinar regarding the use of antimicrobials in farmed animals intended for the food supply chain. So I'm Ingrid Morvan from the COLID, from the Department Regulation and Standard. So regarding the interpretation, the today's session is translated. So I will talk in English and it is translated in Spanish. So to access to the interpretation, you need to go to this little icon with the globe and click on Spanish. If you can't see the icon, you need to click on the three dots and you will find it. So thank you for our interpreter. So please use the chat to present yourself, but you can also, you are welcome also to raise questions. And for questions, we advise you to use this Q&A box because it will help us to not miss any question. Thank you. So the aim of the webinar today, as you may know, so the regulation dealing with the use of antimicrobials were adopted in 2023 and 2024 and will enter into application this year. So this is the end of the transitional period. So the aim is to remind the basic requirements that will apply from September 2026, to highlight some aspects of these requirements that may still need to be addressed in some non-EU countries, and to offer an opportunity to raise questions. So I have the pleasure to be here today with two colleagues from the European Commission, Alfonso Las Heras and Stéphanie Rivière from the unit responsible for this regulation. So they will answer your question at the end of the session. So please raise your question again in this Q&A box. It will help us to manage the question. Thank you. So the agenda for today, I will say some words about AgriInfo program, which is a program thanks to which we are here today. And I will say some words about the background of the regulation. And I will describe the requirements in more detail and the aspect to take into account for the implementation. And then we will focus on some products. And then there will be the question and answer session. So the following presentation has been prepared and with financial support of the European Union, but its content is as a sole responsibility of COLID, which is the association I work for, and can under no circumstance be regarded as reflecting the position of the EU. So some words about AgriInfo program. So AgriInfo program, it's an information program financed by the EU that provides an up-to-date information on all recent and upcoming changes to the EU rules that have an impact on agri-food and fish value chains for low and middle-income countries. The program covers all foodstuff and all low and middle-income countries. So it meets 142 partners. So the program is financed by the EU, as it was said, but is implemented by COLID, which is an international non-profit association supporting the development of inclusive and sustainable agri-food system through programs such as AgriInfo. So what do we do in AgriInfo? So every day we monitor the website to identify the recent and upcoming changes that may have an impact on export of agri-food products from low and middle income countries to the EU. And we consolidate the information on our platform. So on our platform, you will find all relevant changes that can have an impact on this product to these countries. And each time we identify a draft or a text that may have an impact, then we draft what we call a report. They are always structured in the same way. And in this report, we use simple words and we focus on what rule is changing, what is changing, the reason why there are changes, and the implication for low and middle income countries. So the point of this program is really to make sure that the people who need the information get it and be ready when there is a change in EU requirements so that there's no disruption of trade. So here it's a screenshot of our webpage and our platform. So just to show you shortly, so first, the original language is English, but we have also translation into French, Spanish, and Portuguese, and maybe soon in Arabic. So here on the left side below, you have the latest reports which are published. Here you have the latest newsletter, so they are sent twice a month, and they gather all the change in the 2 last weeks. And you can have a look and see they are very short, very straightforward, so that you know very fast if it's relevant for your commodities. To receive this newsletter, you can subscribe. It's free, it's open to all, and we really encourage you to subscribe because if you subscribe, you can also receive alerts in case there is an important change to come on your commodities or on your countries. Then you will receive an email with these alerts. So subscribing is not only for the newsletter, it's for more services than this. So you have these big buttons. With AgriInfo publications, it's where you will find the guidance documents that we draft. The guidance documents are done when there are a lot of change for one sector or when we receive a lot of questions. So for example, there is a guidance document for honey, for aquaculture, for fisheries, and we have a new one regarding PFAS in food contact material. We have also a button with the reports on non-compliances where you will find the rapid alert system notification and the traces interceptions. We have a button to have access directly to the ongoing consultations, both at WTO level and in Have Your Say platform, the EU platform, so that you can contribute if there is a consultation open which is interesting for you. We have also the explainers. It's where you will find the reports explaining the framework legislation. You have a button to search in the database. In that case, you can search by keyword, by topic, or by commodity, and you can even combine them so that you have a better result. And this is a new button regarding the MRL tracker. It's the maximum residue limit tracker. It's to find per commodity which are the MRL, and it covers animal products as well. So just up the page, I just wanted to highlight that you can raise questions if you are from a low and middle income countries. And we have also here the icon for the webinars where you will find some recordings of multi-countries webinars. So to come to the issues, the context of the adoption of the regulations. So the context is the fight against antimicrobial resistance. It is an international topic. In 2019, the World Health Organization declared AMR as one of the top 10 global public health threats facing humanity. And it's even in the top 3 in the EU. So the World Health Organization assessed in 2021 that AMR provoked 1.2 million deaths worldwide directly and 4.7 million deaths indirectly. The World Bank assessed that it cost 1 trillion of additional healthcare costs per year by 2050 and 1 trillion to 3.4 trillion of gross domestic product losses per year by 2030. The, the EU Joint Research Center also assessed that it could provoke 8.2 million deaths linked to resistant bacteria globally in 2050 if urgent action is not taken. So it just to show that it is an important topic and it is necessary to take action. And the EU is already very active, but these new regulations are part of these actions. So the legal framework are the basic regulation on veterinary medicinal product 2019/6, and in particular it's Article 118, and the delegated regulation 2023/905, which is really for countries exporting to the EU. So in this regulation, it is clearly stated that there are two requirements. One requirement is to not use antimicrobials to promote growth or increase yield in farmed animals. The other requirement is to not use antimicrobials that are reserved for human treatment. So there are two requirements. And to put them, to enforce them, there are two measures, which are the list of authorized countries and a new attestation in the official export certificate to the EU. The scope of the regulation are farmed animals and their product. So live animals that are exported to the EU and the product of animal origin intended for human consumption. So the regulations do not apply to gelatin, collagen, highly refined product, composite product, and wild animals. They do not apply neither to animal and food only transiting through the EU and not placed on the market, and they do not apply to animal products that are not intended for human consumption, and to samples also sent to the EU only for testing and purpose. So how it works? So today, when a country wants to export animal products to the EU, it must be listed. So today we have three lists in application. The food safety requirements, which is in Regulation 2021/405. The residue control plans requirement dealing with residues of pesticide, contaminant, and veterinary medicine, which is the same regulation but Annex -1. And the animal health requirement, which is Regulation 2021/404. So depending of the commodities, the country must be listed in one, two, or the three of this list. And if it needs to be in the three, they are all compulsory. So being in one is not enough. They need to be in the three. For example, you have honey must be only in the residue control plans. Meat of bovine, ovine, poultry, they need to be in the residue control plan and animal health requirement list. Casings, they need to be in food safety, in residue control, and animal health. They need to be in all of them. So here, so if you want to know in which list your commodity needs to be, please go on our website. You will find, but when you will receive the presentation, you will have the link. You will find this explainer where there is a table with all commodities and all lists summarized. So what we do today is we have an additional list really linked to the use of antimicrobials. And so this is a new list with a new approach, and it is in addition to the others. So again, when the product needs to be in one, they need to be in all compulsory one. So if one is missing, the export can't take place. So this is the same today. So if the country is not listed in this one, it won't be able to export after September this year. So how this list was drafted, so all countries that are in the Annex -1 regarding residue controls were requested to send guarantees of compliance. And this was done in 2023. So they need to give guarantees for each type of commodity they want to be authorized. So an initial draft was notified to WTO in June 2024 with a consultation period of 90 days. After this consultation period, there was a first list published in Commission Regulation 2024-2598. And it was already announced that this list will be adopted at least once before the entry into application in September. And the member state voted an update on 12th of May. And at the same time, they decided to repeal this regulation to include the list in the regulation 2021-405 so that all lists on public health are all together.
Ingrid, some participants asked to be a bit slower because it goes very quickly, and I think it's quite complex for them to understand. But you will receive also the recording after this event, then you will be able to rewatch it. Okay,
sorry, I will do my best to slow. So the list of authorized countries for antimicrobials will be revised periodically as necessary. So there's no systematic revision. And once a country is in, it may be delisted only if it wishes to be delisted or if there is a proof for non-compliance. But the non-EU countries are requested to send information on their relevant change in their legislation. And countries can also ask to be listed for additional commodities. So the change of the update of the regulation is different from Annex -1 because, you know, for residue control plan, non-EU countries must submit an update of their control plan every year by 31st of March. So here there's no need to do this. And for animal health, it depends of the epidemiologic situation of the country. So it's also another system. So here it's as necessary. So we have seen the first measures, which is to be listed. So it's an important step. It is a necessary step for a country to be listed. But then there is a second step, which is to be able to certify each consignment that will be sent to the EU. So as for other lists, it's not because a country is listed that the consignments are compliant. These are two different things. So it is important to certify that the consignments are compliant, and then there will be check at the border. And unlike the requirement regarding residues or food safety, here there's no maximum residue level and there's no microbial criteria because the requirements apply during the whole life of the animals. So it's not relevant to make laboratory tests because if the antimicrobials have been given early in the life of the animal, there won't be any residues. However, the animal and the product it produced is not compliant. So it works differently from food safety. So the official certificates have been modified mainly by Regulation 2024-399 and corrected and completed by Regulation 2024-2020. The certificate, so this is the list of the certificates that have been modified. So both the certificate for live animals, farmed animals, and the certificate for the product. For So it concerns meat. So you see the certificate for the main domestic um, species raised for meat, but also the mechanically separated meat from ruminant, the mechanically separated meat from pork, poultry, ratit, rabbit, meat preparations, and meat products. For eggs, it is for fresh eggs and processed eggs. For casings, okay, there is only one certificate. For fish, it covers fish, but also crustaceans and mollusks. As far as they are from aquaculture, of course, it doesn't apply to wild fish. Milk and dairy product, raw or processed, and colostrum. Honey and other products of animal origin which are not covered by the others, like fat. And here you have also the live animals, so this is all the species which are farmed. So this is an example of certificate, and you see of the attestation which has been introduced in the certificate. This is for aquaculture, so each time the product is reminded, and it is clearly written that the product from the animals, so it is certified that the product comes from animals that have not received antimicrobials for growth promotion or yield increase, or antimicrobials containing an antimicrobial which is reserved for human treatment. So regarding the first requirements, so no use of antimicrobials to promote growth or increase yield through whole lifespan of the animals. So antimicrobials are antibiotics, antivirals, antiprotozoals, and antifungals. So it doesn't mean that it's forbidden to give antimicrobials. It means that it is forbidden to give antimicrobials as growth promoters or to increase yield. So it means it's allowed, but only to treat the animals. So if there is a medical issue. Antimicrobials are given through medicines or medicated feed. So it is important to identify the antimicrobials that are used and available, and that can have a growth promotion or that totally banned for the EU. So the use of antimicrobials must be documented, as well as the reason for its use, so that evidence can be given that the food is in compliance with this requirement. So this is one of the two requirements, and the second one is dealing with the list of antimicrobials reserved for human medicine. So this is a list published in Regulation 2022-1255, and here it's not a question of giving for treating animals, it's totally forbidden. These antimicrobials are reserved for human treatment. They can't be given at all to farmed animals. So in case it is a case, the product from this animal can't be sent to the EU market. So they won't be accepted on the EU market from September this year. So preparing for compliance. So this is really important to understand that it is from the birth to the animal to the entry to the EU, to the competent authority who will sign the certificate. So it is important that the authorities that will sign needs to know if the food is compliant with these requirements. So the food will be certified as coming from animals that have not received antimicrobials to promote growth or increase yield, and have not received at all antimicrobials that are reserved for human treatment. And this information is from the birth of the animal to all farmed involved, and then to all operators until the authorities that we need to sign the certificate. The way to implement the system is up to non-EU countries. It's up to them to decide how this is checked and demonstrated. So there's no single recommendation to compliance. Each trading partner must define its approach to ensure compliance that reflects their existing rules and practices. So what we will present to you are elements to take into consideration when implementing the requirement. So one way to do is to replicate EU rules in the national legislation. So when the exporting country has legal requirements that fully replicate EU rules, meaning both the prohibition to use antimicrobials for growth promoters and banning the use of antimicrobials for human treatment, then it can be assumed that after the entry into application of this legislation, the animal born are compliant with the rules because operators have to put on the market only compliant food. However, it implies that there is a national legislation that it covers both, and there are also official controls to check that this is enforced and that farmers are aware of these requirements. So to prepare for September this year, it is important to ask what food will be exported from September onwards and when was born the animals that produce this food. Were the animal born before or after the date of application of the legislation? Because the law is a guarantee of compliance, but only if it covers the two bans, and if the animals are born after the date of application, and if also the products are not mixed with other origins from other countries that do not have the same legislation. So here the challenges can be regarding animals that have a long cycle of production, the animal products with a long shelf life, the animal products sold in bulk with different origin, and the derived products. So examples of cycle of production. So for beef, the animal raised for meat. So these are average and only indicators, but normally they are around 24 months. But meat from dairy animals can be much older and goes until up to 10 years. And for milk, the period is from the 24 months up to 10 years. So for milk is from older animals. So this is important to calculate if the legislation was already in application or not. For the sheep and goat, it's 24 months. Again, meat 18. So veal, pork.
Sorry, there is an interruption with the internet connection. I hope to reconnect soon. Yeah, sorry, it was, yeah, we had an interruption. That's okay, just a few seconds, Ingrid.
Okay. So just for casings, so casings are from beef, sheep, veal, pork, slaughtered, so they come after the meat production. That's why they are a bit alone like this. They have a long production cycle. So other example of preservation process, which give a long shelf life of product. So we have product in vacuum, dried product, frozen product, canned product, product in brine, and salted product, and sometimes there is a combination of several, and then the product can have several years. So this is also to take into account when checking if the legislation was already in application or not. So when the national legislation does not replicate EU requirements or does not replicate them fully or entered into application a bit late regarding the entry into application of the regulation in September, or the product were mixed with a product from other countries who do not have the same legislation, then another system has to be put in place, and this is the traceability and documentation system. So the information must follow from the first farmer to the export the product. So this is a big difference with the food safety requirements, where you can check the macro criteria or the residues. So here it's an information system which is necessary. So the information system implies that the farmer and his vet or a vet are aware of the requirements. So they must be aware of the principle and of the antimicrobials. And they need to check on the farm what are the feed at risk or the medicine at risk. So it's common in farmed animals to have 3 steps. So birth to weaning, rearing, milking, laying eggs, and finishing. And to export to the EU, the establishment in food safety must be approved. But it's not the case for farmers, for the primary production and the fishers as well. So the farm are identified by their authorities and they must be registered, but they are not EU approved, which may mean that they don't have the same knowledge of the EU requirements. Also, farmers do not necessarily know if their products will be for the EU export market. So the information to farmer is really critical, and the information system must be accessible and affordable to all operators, including small orders. So some steps, example of steps to be taken to be compliant. So to assess and identify the antimicrobials at farm level. So antimicrobials that can have a growth promotion effect, or antimicrobials reserved for human treatment, and the medicated feed that may contain the antimicrobials. So the challenge here is that farmers may know the trade names of their product, may not necessarily the substance in this. So it is really important here to have the help of the vet to identify which substance, which medicine they have in the farm that may be at risk. Maintain accurate records of all veterinary medicine administered to the animals, and to keep the veterinary prescription. So in case an antimicrobial has a growth promotion effect, it is necessary that there is a veterinary prescription to prove that it was given for treating the animal for disease. And the information leaflet of the medicine can be also a clue to show compliance, in particular when there's no growth promotion effect mentioned in the information leaflet. But if there is a growth promotion effect, then it is really necessary to have the veterinary prescription to prove that it was given for treatment. So when it does not exist, it is really useful to have a national register of veterinary medicine and medicated feed, and also to use alternative treatment to antimicrobials that are reserved for human treatment. And also something very important to organize is to be able to segregate the compliant animal from the non-compliant ones. So that it is clear those who can be used for producing food for the EU market. And yes, this can be a challenge for small holdings and for dairy farms where the milk is mixed. So the information must accompany the product, so either on paper or digitally. It can be a simple declaration attestation from the farm, dated and signed, that the animal are compliant. It means here that the farmer doesn't need to put all information of its animal, but just to say, I declare that it's compliant with the EU requirements. However, he needs to keep the evidence at farm. So he needs to keep the recording, he needs to keep the prescription of the vet, the notice of the drugs, to be able to prove when there is a control. Another way of doing is to use certification schemes. There are some on antimicrobials free. In that case, it means, of course, that the certification organization check the compliance at farm level. So the information needs to reach the official authorities that will sign the certificate. The competent authorities must ensure the validity of farm certifications and declarations and the effectiveness of any segregation system. Another possibility, it's in case it is feasible, it's to demonstrate the absence of a practice. So, for example, where there is a national compulsory register of veterinary medicine, and there's no application to put on the market medicines that have the antimicrobials that are prohibited, it can be considered that these antimicrobials are not used for this product in the country. So in that case, the competent authority may explore a way to simplify the work to be done by the operator if the competent authority can guarantee, of course, that on the field these antimicrobials are not used. So the traceability and documentation system stretching can work provided it is operational before the birth of the food-producing animals. And here it's important to have a specific attention for long production cycle and long shelf life. And when animals or products are moved between non-EU countries, both countries must be listed in Regulation 2024-2598 and must provide written guarantees on non-use of prohibited antimicrobials. So there are three situations requiring particular attention. These are the situations where the live animals are moved between countries. So we just mentioned it. So it's not enough that the first country or the last country are compliant. All must be compliant. When products are mixed from different origins, so in that case, only compliant food must be mixed. Otherwise, the whole batch won't be compliant for the EU. So it's necessary to have the rules or robust guarantees. And the third case is when products are sent to other countries to be processed and lose their origin when they are processed. So this is in particular the case of casings, including EU casings. When they are processed in a non-EU country, they lose their EU origin. And so the processing country must also demonstrate compliance for being able to re-export the product to the EU and ensure the traceability of the EU casings. So we come to the fourth part regarding a focus on each food. So starting with meat. So here you have the list of countries that are listed to export meat to the EU, but only those which are under agrafoscope. So you won't have here, for example, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. You have only the countries that are under agrafoscope. So the points of attention for meat, it's the fact that there may be several farms involved. So the information must be given at all steps and pass to the next farmer. Also, the fact that, in the slaughterhouse, for the time being, the way the slaughter line is organized is really depending of hygiene criteria. So the dirty animals are slaughtered at the end of the day. So here it will be a new criteria to integrate to organize the slaughter of the animals so that there's no mix of the meat between compliant and non-compliant animals. And the product can be mixed as well, like meat preparation, processed or mechanically separated meat with different origin. So it's important to keep the traceability and to have a system to segregate in case there are non-compliant meat to not be mixed with the compliant mix. So we also already mentioned the long production cycle and the long shelf life in some cases, like for frozen, dried, cured, or canned meat. So I wanted to mention as well the food chain information, which is really specific to the meat sector. So there is already in place for food safety a chain of information between the last farmer, the slaughterhouse, and the official vet. And in this food chain information, you have the mention of the veterinary drugs and the waiting time. So here, it can be a start of the documentation system, but it must be completed by the information before the last farmer. And it's not always, it's not only the drugs with the waiting period, but it's a question of having also the antimicrobials that the information that antimicrobials have not been given for growth promotion or increasing health, but only for treating the animals. And of course, antimicrobials that are totally banned must not be mentioned here. So regarding milk and dairy, so this is also the list. We also already mentioned the long production cycle for milk. So the milk is mixed already at the farm level. So it may be already a challenge if in a farm there are non-compliant animals, because then it means already at farm level it must be segregated, and then it is mixed with the milk of other farm and then in the processing plant. So the segregation system can be is important to be organized. And we have also long shelf life product for milk, like milk powder or cheese. And also for milk, there are products which are using the same certificate, derivative product. So it's important that these factories also understand that they need to be compliant and that they receive the information. So regarding casings, again, there is a long production cycle. The intestines are pulled together from the slaughterhouse level. So for the time being, there's no edge segregation. So this is something to organize to be able to check if they are compliant when the regulation will enter into application. They are also mixed all together, multiple origin. They have a long shelf life because they are salted and can remain years. And also more than 80% of EU casing are processed in a non-EU country. So it's important in the processing country to have a robust traceability system so that EU casings are not mixed with non-compliant casing so that they can be re-exported. For eggs, so the eggs are mixed from several farms. There's no link, of course, of the eggs with the age of the laying hens. They are mixed regarding their size, regarding their origin, but their freshness, but not regarding the age of the animal. So this is also a new criteria. There can be multiple farms of origin. Also, segregation system need to be organized, in particular in small holdings, and the longer shelf life for eggs product. For honey, this is for the requirement regarding the list of antimicrobials reserved for human treatments. So the life of the honey is more or less 1 to 6 months. So honey can be sold in bulk, so it's not always the case, but it can be. So this different origin can be mixed. So this is also a point of attention. Also the small holdings. So to ensure that only compliant honey is mixed. But in some cases, it may happen that the list of antimicrobial reserved for human treatment is not used at all in this country. There are already many countries having also a list of antimicrobial reserved for human treatment. So there may be here a way to organize a simplification to give the evidence that the honey is from bees that have not received the antimicrobial reserved for human treatment. For aquaculture, so it covers both fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. So here the lifespan is relatively short for shrimps, but it can be longer in other cases. Also, multiple origin, long shelf life, segregation system is always something to think about to avoid to mix compliant with non-compliant fish, and also to ensure that the small holdings are aware of the requirements. And you have again the list of non-EU countries exporting to the EU, which are in agri-info scope, which quite a big list here. So the conclusion, the key takeaways. So being in the listed countries is good, is important. It's a necessary step, but it's not enough. It's also compulsory to be able to give guarantees that each shipment is in compliance with EU requirements, so that the competent authority can sign the certificate, the new attestation from 3rd September this year. So competent authority, primary producers, veterinarians, and operators all along the chain must be aware, trained, and equipped. The areas demanding particular attention, so the consignments with animal products from multiple countries, including for triangular trade, the product with long shelf life, the segregation of non-compliant animals and food from the compliant one, and the countries can be delisted if the compliance cannot be guaranteed, and there will be EU audit of these requirements. So just to finish, we have issued in Agrinfo a guidance document, which is now published not only in English, but also in French, in Spanish, and in Portuguese. It can be found on our website. And thank you for your attention. And you are now invited to put your question, if possible, in the Q&A box. And we will go through the questions now. Please do.